Stages of awakening. We are accustomed to our own feng shui, so as long as we live comfortably in the thick and nauseating atmosphere of ourselves, taking everything for granted, including ourselves, we cannot awaken. Why is this so? It is because we have never begun to ask ourselves any questions as to what we are or what any of this all means. We simply eat and sleep, complete our ablutions, fight and quarrel, talk and hear, see and touch, move about and feel. Taking it all for granted, not having the slightest idea that any of it is extraordinary. We are easily satisfied in this regard and move about on the surface of things, like and dislike, love and hate, work or play and so on. It is all, as far as we are concerned, what we are entitled to as human beings, and there is no sense of the strangeness or wonder in which any of this business of living takes place. If this is so, then we are certainly asleep, and it will take a great deal of trauma and unpleasantness, a good deal of startling experience, many external heavy shocks to awaken us to the beginning of any real thinking. Life contains many natural shocks, one of which is death. Being confronted by a near-death experience can sometimes make us begin to think in a real way. However, the torrent of our senses, and the crescendo of modern life both dulls and deafens this reflection point, so that it rarely emerges and becomes felt. We are definitely upset if we do not have our own way in matters that closely concern us, but this does not make anyone think about what and where they are. On the contrary, it usually puts us more to sleep than ever. We plunge once again into life expecting to have our desires and needs ultimately fulfilled, by just doing it, or manifesting through positive thinking and motivation. Regarding all temporary or continual failure in this respect as entirely exceptional. As Professor Einstein once said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results each time. All this, however, is necessary, until we begin to think, as then a new situation unfolds within us. We have begun to think. This work is therefore to make us think, not to think how we can get the better of someone who we feel has let us down, or how to attract an individual that ignores us, how to get more personal power, a promotion at work, provide better customer service or take charge in meetings and attract more attention. Perceive more pleasure, more comfort, a better position, and how to say more unpleasant things of others. No, this work is to make us think precisely about that side of our personality through self-observation, so that we begin to see what and where we are as ourselves, just exactly who it is that we label as me, myself, and I. This unfortunately takes a long time, and nothing is worse than to pretend we know already. Someone that assumes to have or to know what they do not know or have, such a person has a picture of themselves that they carry around in their purse or wallet. Kundalini stops everything real in every direction of our development. Of all the casting out of devils mentioned in the Gospels, the casting out of pictures of oneself must surely be foundational, for pictures hinder every new experience and every line of inner development. We all have pictures of ourselves. Wherever they practice deception, and there they stop development in a more real sense than a ton of concrete will prevent anything from growing beneath it. This is the Prince of Lies referred to, and the devil is certainly in the details. We think of our imagination as some sort of light airy nothingness, even priding each other in its depth and scope. However, imagination is very powerful, very real, and cautioned against in esoteric literature as the power of Kundalini because it is as real as reinforced concrete. Pictures are formed out of imagination, controlled through vanity. They are fixed forms of imagination, woven by vanity. Vanity is a terrific force in us, and imagination is the powerful builder and bricklayer of that vanity, its chief constructor, much like the doozers in Fraggle Rock. They build great pictures of us, so we cannot move into a new stage of ourselves, into new ideas and feelings, experiences and meaning. Regrettably, we do not see either our vanity or these pictures unless it's in others. Because it's all too close to us, and we are them. Unless we use the reflection of those closest to us, observing through their eyes and then taking those shared external observations to heart. We may see the results of vanity, but not in and of itself. We see the results when we are insulted or taken for granted. We take ourselves for granted, but do not like others to do so, a paradox at first sight, but not really so. In short, wherever we are vain, it is there that we are blind to ourselves. None of us thinks that they are vain, none of us really thinks about their dominating pictures that are served all through their day. We are too close, too much ourselves, and so do not recognize these false idols. The side of what we actually are, and the side of what we pretend and imagine ourselves to be, are two contradictory sides to the same coin. These two sides exist in everyone without exception. The action of this work, once it begins to be sought after, makes us become gradually aware of that contradiction, but this unfolds over many years. Then we begin to have traces of real suffering, inner conflict interspersed with all sorts of attempts at self-justifying, excuses and reactions, until we become, through a growing sense of inner taste, sick and tired of self-justifying, lame excuses and the like. This marks a stage in the work, a definite point in self-development, because it is here that pictures weaken, we cast down our columns and pedestals. For a long time this work is something outside of us. We take notes about it, draw diagrams and ask questions about words. Then it either begins to penetrate into our inner psyche or not. If it does, and we acquiesce, wish it to cross the threshold, then the work enters and it begins, as it were, to judge us, to point out this or that, very softly at first, but more distinctly afterwards. We seek to avoid it, of course. But once it has penetrated within us, by trying to avoid it we only increases our inner turmoil, realizing that we cannot do without this, and that to be deprived of its mild current of new meaning is actually worse than death. We realize then what it means to be dead in the sense of this work. That stage is easily imitated and so often is. Then people talk a lot of their difficulties and challenges, there is much wailing and the wringing of hands. Later they fall silent, for to talk about our difficulties is a sign that we have not understood very much. However, it is a necessary stage for all to pass through. This work is a series of stages in our understanding. If it does not penetrate, it remains only words, rattling around in empty corridors and remaining on the surface only. Then we tend to argue about anything and everything. However, its ideas are prolific, capable of penetrating and nurturing both our mind and feelings, otherwise it would not be work, not real teaching. It corresponds to something we have forgotten, something dormant in us, something to which we have become oblivious a long time ago, something covered over by continual, busy living. That is why the ancient teaching of the elders can awaken us. All awakening is unpleasant, and naturally we can always avoid this unpleasantness by means of all the apparatus of false personality, by ingenious or even stupid arguing, by insincerity, by buffers, by self-justifying, by negative attitudes, lying, by not trying to think, resorting to pictures, backsliding into all manner of things to keep our sleep intact. If the work penetrates, however, this becomes more and more difficult. We begin to become aware that this work is actually saying something that may be distant and hard to catch at first, but nonetheless quite true. This is painful. It is sometimes scarcely endurable, but at the same time a marvelous experience that we don't want to give up. It is painful to one side of us, yet exquisite to another side. This will of course sound very strange to those expecting the work to cure their rheumatism, lower their blood pressure, sleep better at night or improve their income-generating opportunities, help them to enjoy the fruit of life and tell them exactly what to eat or drink. Such a level of attention to this work leads nowhere. The whole concept is too small, too selfish and too self-centered. A deeper sense of life is necessary, where we can eventually grasp the three lines of work: work for and on oneself, work with and for others, then work in and for the work itself. Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. There is a saying in the work that its purpose is to transmute lead into gold. This speaks in terms of ancient alchemical language. The subject of real alchemy was always man, and our inner transformation. However, this work adds that a person must already have gold to make more gold. We need some special inner understanding to begin with, which is called possessing magnetic center, the very first sign of difference in being. Speaking from another perspective, this work aims at the development of mechanical man, number 1, number 2 and number 3, into man number 4, the balanced individual, with some form of equilibrium and constancy. In this regard, certain kinds of effort are expected apart from working on oneself in the line of non-identifying, self-remembering, inner separation, and so on. Self-remembering is the most important part of it all, having many degrees and stages. Everyone can, to a limited extent, begin to practice and understand self-remembering. Full self-remembering, however, is one thing, but many steps exist in our approach to it. Obeying the work at a critical moment is one form of self-remembering. But, as the goal of man number 4 refers to someone whose centers all have some development, so they are not one-sided and malformed, where we encounter a good golfer, a good scientist, a musician or artist, a mathematician and so on. It becomes necessary to educate oneself, which was the meaning of arete in ancient Greece, the art of kingship or being a good ruler. How, said P.D. Ouspensky on one occasion, can we expect to come into the possession of great knowledge when we make no effort to get to know any of the common sense that is accessible to everyone? If we divide someone's work into work on the line of their knowledge and work on the line of their being, it is possible to realize that work on the line of knowledge may include not only the special knowledge of this work but also the ordinary knowledge in which they find themselves deficient, a holistic knowledge of all things. This demands basic effort, where effort of this kind is absolutely necessary. People sometimes enter the work with hardly any ordinary knowledge. They then have no means of comparing any special understanding of this work with general education. They have no power of judgment or perspective, and so take what they are taught as if it were simply ordinary teaching. They have no vessel ready to receive into. This is a great impediment, because having no power of contrasting, they take this work as general information, which means that it falls upon ordinary parts of centers, just as the arithmetic table might, or a demonstration of the many ways to cook eggs, make hydrogen from water or find a square root and change the oil on your motor vehicle. The more we study ordinary knowledge, the more we see how all that the work teaches is greater wisdom, and how it may rise above the ideas of ordinary thinking, which are disconnected. By filling roles in centers through the effort of getting to know what can be known, the entire mechanism is strengthened, and our breadth of mind is increased. We cannot do this work from too narrow a basis, either of emotional or intellectual intelligence. General knowledge sometimes nourishes this work directly, as when we can see connections and illustrations, or sometimes indirectly by showing us how it is misunderstood. In this work, everything can become useful, once the work has begun to penetrate our psyche and sense of will, affecting our level of being, and not simply resting in memory. Then all life becomes your teacher, as Gurdjieff put it.